The phantom fury cut through the vastness of space, a solitary figure gliding through the eternal night. Its sleek black hull absorbed the light from distant stars, its engines silent, pushing the ship forward at an unrelenting pace. Inside the control room, the air felt unnaturally still, the pressure steady but oppressive. Captain Voss stood at the viewport, eyes narrowing as he studied the endless expanse of stars. It was quiet, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that made you wonder if something was coming, waiting in the shadows. A faint vibration underfoot was the only sign of life on the ship, the subtle pulse of the ship's drive systems. A small flicker on the display caught his attention, an anomaly too regular to be natural. He tilted his head slightly, eyes scanning the data. Something was off. "Captain," came a voice from behind. Commander Derek Halston stood near the tactical console, his usual calm replaced by something sharper, more urgent. "We've picked up something." A signal. Voss turned, his face unreadable. "A distress signal?" Derek nodded. "Yes, but it's strange. Nothing like we've seen before." His fingers flew over the controls. A map of the surrounding star systems appeared, a blip pulsing far beyond their current position. "It's coming from the edge of known space." Voss exhaled slowly, his mind working through the possibilities. "And you're sure it's not a trap?" "It's not a normal signal," Derek said, hesitant. "It's coded, yes, but there's a pattern. And the urgency, it's real, Captain." Voss took a long moment, weighing the decision. He couldn't ignore it, not with this kind of desperation. "Prepare the ship for a detour," he ordered, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Plot a course, full speed ahead." The silence of the room deepened, broken only by the sound of fingers tapping on a console. Outside, the stars continued their indifferent dance, unaware of the conflict soon to unfold. Voss's mind raced, but he gave nothing away. The Phantom Fury was built for moments like this, tactical precision in the face of uncertainty. His crew was ready, though their faces betrayed the tension beneath the surface. As Derek set the course, Voss remained still, lost in thought. A mission like this was exactly what his ship had been made for, and exactly what it had been trained to handle. A challenge, and they didn't back down from challenges. "We'll be there in 12 cycles, Derek said, looking up. "Plenty of time to prepare for whatever's waiting." Voss turned back to the viewport, the dark abyss of space stretching before him. The silence was more than just the lack of sound. It was the calm before the storm. And this time, he wasn't sure what the storm would bring. The unknown had never been so close. The Phantom Fury surged forward, its sleek silhouette carving a path through the void. Outside the observation window, the stars stretched like a field of diamonds, cold and distant. Inside, the ship felt different, tighter, charged with anticipation. Captain Voss stood at the command center, his eyes fixed on the flickering map that marked their course. The tension in the air was palpable, each crew member absorbed in their task, each aware of the danger ahead. "Captain," Derek's voice broke through the quiet, "we're coming up on the signal's origin. It's unsettlingly quiet out here." Voss didn't respond immediately. His gaze was steady, his mind working through the possibilities. They were venturing into uncharted territory. The signal had been brief, almost frantic, a cry for help. But from where, and by whom? His instincts told him to prepare for the worst. "Anything on the sensors?" "Nothing that stands out," Derek replied, his fingers dancing across the console, adjusting settings. "We're still getting intermittent readings from a nearby asteroid field, but nothing directly from the signal's source. It's like it's waiting." The air in the control room shifted, the atmosphere thickening as the crew silently anticipated their next move. Voss felt the weight of his decision pressing against his chest. He glanced at Lieutenant Rourke Helix, who was monitoring the external cameras. Rourke's face was impassive, but the slight furrow of his brow told a different story. The ship's sensors could only give them so much information. Everything else would be raw instinct and calculation. Prepare for anything, Voss ordered, his voice firm. Get the shields up. Derek, keep us in stealth mode until we're right on top of it. As the crew scrambled to execute the orders, the ship's motion shifted. There was no sound, only the feeling of velocity pushing against Voss's chest. His stomach sank as the seconds stretched out. The anticipation was almost unbearable. His mind ran through every possible scenario: an ambush, a decoy, or worse, a trap, too elaborate to detect until it was too late. Rourke's voice shattered the stillness. Captain, you need to see this. Voss moved swiftly toward the forward display, his boots clicking against the deck. The view shifted and a massive, dark shape materialized in the distance. It was a ship, an alien vessel, or what was left of it. Jagged, half-destroyed sections drifted through space, illuminated by distant starlight. The wreckage was massive, but it felt fragile, like a shell that had been shattered by a force far greater than it could withstand. Derek leaned in, eyes narrowed as he analyzed the ship's trajectory. It's still drifting. No signs of life, no signs of movement. Voss leaned forward, his gaze locking on the debris. Where's the signal coming from? The wreckage? Rourke shook his head, his voice strained. It's still coming, Captain. Just beyond the ship. There's something else out there, another anomaly. Voss's pulse quickened, a chill running down his spine. The signal hadn't stopped. And now, there was something else, something unknown, lurking in the depths. Prepare to board. We'll take it from there. The crew fell into motion, the calm before the storm shattered as they prepped for a boarding mission. The Phantom Fury drifted closer to the wreckage, the cold expanse of space pressing in from all sides. As the crew suited up, Voss remained at the command center, staring at the dark ship, the silence pressing in from all directions. Something was wrong. He could feel it. The story was far from over. The Phantom Fury glided in closer to the wreckage, its hull now shrouded in the cold stillness of the void. The dark, jagged ship before them loomed like a ghost, its silhouette fractured and broken, drifting with no clear purpose. The ship's size was staggering, but it carried an unsettling aura of vulnerability, as though the massive structure had been stripped of its power. The vast emptiness surrounding it amplified the isolation, the silence suffocating, as if even the stars themselves had taken a breath and held it in. Captain Voss stood at the command center, the view of the wreckage filling the screen in front of him. His heart beat a little faster, the weight of the unknown settling on his shoulders. Steady, he murmured under his breath. He turned to Derek. Prepare a small boarding team. We're going in. Derek nodded without hesitation, his hands moving over the console with mechanical precision. The ship was close now, too close to ignore the sense of foreboding pressing in on them from every direction. Every sensor in the room was alert, buzzing quietly as the wreckage came into focus. We'll need to be cautious, Derek said, his voice quiet but firm. This could be a trap. We don't know what's out there. Voss looked at him, his jaw tightening. We have no choice. The signal's still transmitting. His eyes narrowed as he focused on the screen. It was faint but persistent, a broken cry echoing through space, unable to be silenced by distance. Rourke's voice came from behind them, cutting through the tension. Captain, something's odd. I've been running diagnostics, but there's interference. The signal, it's coming from inside the ship, and it's shifting. Voss turned to Rourke, his focus sharp. What do you mean, shifting? Rourke stood, eyes glued to the display. The signal is distorting. It's like it's evolving, changing its form but still carrying that same frantic message. It's almost as if something is adjusting it, guiding it. Voss's stomach tightened. We're not the only ones looking for this ship. We may be walking into the jaws of a trap, Derek muttered, half to himself. A carefully laid one, too. Voss didn't respond. He was already moving, striding toward the airlock. No time to waste. Get the team ready. We move out in 5. The cold steel of the hallway pressed against Voss as he suited up, the sudden weight of his armor more pronounced in the quiet. Every motion was deliberate, the sound of gloves snapping into place almost too loud in the stillness. The entire crew knew what was at stake. This wasn't just a mission to investigate a distress signal anymore. They were walking into a mystery wrapped in danger, the kind that could swallow them whole if they weren't careful. The team gathered in the airlock, all of them suited and ready for what lay beyond. Voss's eyes scanned each face as he took a deep breath. There was no room for hesitation. They had no idea what waited in the wreckage, but the urge to uncover the truth was stronger than the fear gnawing at him. Rourke was the first to speak as the airlock door hissed open. "I'll monitor from here. Stay in contact." Voss nodded, stepping into the dark void of the unknown. His boots met the cracked surface of the alien ship, the sensation odd underfoot, like walking on shattered glass. His breath fogged inside the helmet as he moved forward, the emptiness pressing in all around him. The corridors were eerily silent, their metal walls streaked with black, scorched marks. They hadn't seen signs of life, but something was waiting. The signal was growing stronger now, more urgent. The team's weapons were ready, fingers gripping the cold, steady metal. With each step deeper into the wreckage, the sense of dread grew heavier, and the unnatural quiet seemed to pulse around them. Something was alive inside this ship, but whether it was a survivor or something far worse, Voss couldn't yet tell. Captain Voss's boots crunched softly against the debris scattered across the wreckage's hallway. The once glossy metal walls, now dulled and streaked with burn marks, seemed to pulse with a strange energy, as though the ship itself was holding its breath. The air was thick, heavy with the remnants of something long gone, decay, tension, and something deeper, more unspoken. The distant echo of the distress signal reverberated faintly in their comms, threading its urgency through the silence like a distant whisper. Voss moved forward, every step deliberate, each sound amplified in the stillness. His fingers twitched instinctively near his sidearm, the cool grip a reassuring presence in the darkness. His mind raced. How could an advanced civilization, one capable of sending out such an urgent call, have fallen so utterly silent? There were no signs of life, no movement in the corners of his view. Only the flickering lights overhead, casting fleeting shadows that made the walls seem to shift with every glance. Derek and Rourke moved in sync behind him, their presence a quiet anchor in the unsettling quiet. The corridors twisted, as though designed to confuse, but they followed the signal's trail. Voss's instincts screamed at him to be cautious, to wait for more data, but the weight of the unknown pushed him onward. "Anything?" Voss asked, his voice cutting through the oppressive silence. Rourke's voice came through the comms, strained but steady. "I'm picking up more interference, Captain. The signals... It's different. It's like it's coming from multiple sources, almost like it's being repeated." Voss's heart skipped a beat. "Repeated?" he asked, his pulse quickening. "Where?" "Just ahead. There's a room. Looks like a control chamber. The signal's converging there." Derek's voice added to the mix, lower than usual. "If they're trying to lure us in, it's working." Voss's gaze snapped to Derek. "We don't know that yet. Keep sharp." As they approached the control room, the temperature seemed to drop. The air became colder, thicker, the kind of chill that ran down your spine and made every movement feel sluggish. The door ahead was half closed, its frame cracked like it had been forcibly breached. Voss's pulse thudded in his ears as he edged closer. His gloved hand rested lightly on the door's jagged edge, and with a sharp exhale, he pushed it open. Inside, the room was a chaos of tangled wires, shattered consoles, and flickering lights that danced like dying fireflies. Yet, in the center of it all, there was a single, intact console, bathed in an eerie blue glow. The distress signal was stronger here, almost unbearable in its intensity. The air felt alive with static, buzzing around them like a swarm of unseen insects. Voss stepped forward, his eyes scanning the room. "What the hell happened here?" Derek moved beside him, his breath audible through the comm. "This doesn't look like a battle, more like a malfunction. Something went wrong." Rourke took a slow step toward the console. "Captain," he said, voice tight with a mixture of awe and fear, "you need to see this." Voss approached the console, and as he did, his heart seemed to still. The screen flickered to life, revealing strange, unfamiliar symbols. The distress signal was coming from here, but it was no longer just a call for help. It was a command, a directive, encoded in a language they couldn't decipher. Before Voss could speak, a low rumble echoed from the ship's depths, something deep, a tremor through the hull, like the sound of a heartbeat from the very walls themselves. Rourke's voice trembled. "We're not alone, Captain." Voss's eyes widened, his body instinctively bracing for impact. The ship was waking up, but the question remained, from what and why? The rumble beneath their feet intensified, sending a shiver through the crew. Voss turned toward the door as it groaned and vibrated. A heavy pressure building in the air, like the prelude to a storm. The low sound was not mechanical. It was something alive, something unseen, reverberating through the ship's dark veins. The signal had transformed from a cry for help to a pulse, urgent, raw, and growing louder. "Everyone stay sharp," Voss ordered, his voice cutting through the rising tension. His hand hovered over the control panel, but he made no move to act. The console glowed with an unsettling pulse, the alien symbols flashing faster now, almost alive with an energy Voss could feel in his bones. Something was waking up, and they were at the center of it. "Captain," Derelict called from behind him, his tone tight. "This signal, it's changing. It's not just a distress call anymore, it's guiding us. But towards what?" The air was thick now, dense with anticipation, and the acrid tang of burnt metal hung in the corners of the room. The sound of distant metal scraping, as though 1,000 gears were shifting in unison, filled the background. Voss stepped closer to the console, his hand brushing the cold surface. His mind raced. This wasn't just a malfunction. Whatever had triggered the ship's distress call was part of something far larger, something intentionally hidden. "I don't like this," Rourke muttered, his voice strained. "The walls, they feel like they're closing in." The tension was palpable. A faint, almost imperceptible hiss echoed from the ventilation system, but it wasn't the sound of air moving. It was deliberate, rhythmic. Something was adjusting itself. Voss turned to Derelict, his gaze unwavering. "Get the crew ready. We're going deeper." Derelict gave a sharp nod, though his usual confidence was shaken. Voss knew the risks. They were venturing into the unknown. The deep hum of the ship around them seemed to match their every move, like the heartbeat of something older and far more dangerous. Rourke stepped forward, hand on his gun, eyes scanning every shadow. "We're walking blind into something. If this ship isn't abandoned, then it's playing us." Voss clenched his jaw but said nothing. The deeper they went, the more the feeling of being watched crept over him. He could almost hear the thudding of his own heart beneath the weight of the ship's silent gaze. With Derelict leading the way, they descended into the lower levels, the corridors twisting like veins, winding deeper into the ship's belly. The flickering lights above them cast long, warped shadows, and the air felt oppressive, like it was holding something back, something just out of reach. The walls seemed to pulse with each step, each breath of air thickening in their lungs. Ahead, a dimly lit chamber beckoned them. A jagged hole in the wall seemed to open toward a massive spherical device at the center, pulsating with energy. The moment they stepped closer, the hum returned, louder this time, more urgent. The device wasn't just powering on, it was feeding off something. A noise suddenly split the silence, a metallic screeching like claws scraping against stone. Rourke whipped around, his face pale. "Something's moving down there. Something in the shadows." The room felt colder now. Voss's gaze darted around. The device before them hummed, glowing brighter with each passing second, as though feeding on the energy of the ship, or something more. "Get ready," he whispered. "We don't know what we're dealing with." The pulse of the ship's core quickened, and the temperature dropped. Something was waking, something that had been waiting for them. The hairs on the back of Voss's neck stood up, but he didn't turn away. His instincts screamed at him to run, but there was no turning back now, not when the truth was just beyond their grasp. The air seemed to thicken, the oppressive weight of silence hanging over them like a shroud. The spherical device pulsed, its eerie glow casting elongated shadows on the walls, as if the very darkness was trying to consume them. Voss could feel the temperature drop further, the coolness biting through his suit. The walls of the ship groaned, as though the very structure was alive, reacting to their presence. Rourke's breath hitched, the metallic taste of fear creeping into his mouth. "Captain, I don't like this," he muttered, his voice hoarse. His fingers tightened around his weapon as his eyes flicked nervously to the shadows that seemed to shift, unnervingly alive. The atmosphere was so still, it felt as though even the air itself was holding its breath. Voss's gaze was fixed on the device, its surface now shimmering with an energy that wasn't just mechanical. It felt like something ancient, something organic, feeding off the life of the ship. The walls around them pulsed in time with the device, and Voss swore he could almost hear a whispering noise, like the murmurs of voices long dead. His pulse quickened as the oppressive feeling of being watched crawled up his spine. "Commander," Voss called, his voice tight. "We need to find out what this is before it's too late." Derelict stepped forward, his eyes scanning the device, his breath steady despite the tension thickening in the air. "This isn't any kind of technology I've ever seen," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "It feels wrong, like it's alive." The ship seemed to breathe, its heavy pulse rattling the floor beneath their boots. With every thrum of the device, Voss felt it deep in his chest, a rhythmic pressure that was almost suffocating. Something about this place was wrong, but what choice did they have now? The signal was still coming from somewhere within the ship, relentless, drawing them in. Derelict moved closer to the device, his gloved hand hovering just above it, hesitant. "It's drawing power from the ship's core," he said, his tone edged with caution. "It's almost as if it's—" He was interrupted by a sudden sharp screech. The sound echoed through the ship, rattling the metal walls. Rourke spun around, eyes wide. Voss raised his hand, silencing them. His ears were ringing and his senses sharpened, his every instinct screaming that they were no longer alone. "Get ready," he ordered, voice low but firm. "We're not the only ones here." The moment he spoke, the temperature dropped further, the breath from their helmets visible in the cold air. The walls trembled, and from the shadows ahead, something moved. A figure, barely visible in the dim light, slithered toward them, its form indistinct but unmistakably human-shaped. Voss's hand tightened on his weapon, his heart pounding. "Show yourself," he demanded, his voice cutting through the cold. The figure paused, then moved forward again, its movement smooth, predatory. As it emerged from the darkness, Voss's breath caught in his throat. The figure was no longer entirely human. Its skin was slick and black, veined with iridescent lines that shimmered like the surface of oil in water. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural light, an almost too human hunger burning behind them. Voss's voice was steady, but his heart raced. "What are you?" The creature tilted its head slightly, as if pondering the question. It spoke in a voice that sounded both alien and familiar, a guttural rasp that reverberated through the room. "We are the ones who have waited. And now, you have come." Voss's mind raced, but his voice remained calm. "Why?" The creature's lips twisted in a half-smile, a cruel curve that sent a chill down Voss's spine. "To witness the end of your kind, and the beginning of something new." The ship groaned again, and the lights flickered as the device pulsed. Brighter now. Something was coming. And it wasn't just a battle. It was the dawn of something far darker, something Voss hadn't yet begun to understand. The air crackled with a palpable tension as the creature's words echoed through the chamber, chilling in their clarity and ominous portent. Captain Voss, his stance unwavering, faced the entity, his mind racing to piece together the implications of its chilling declaration. The air around them seemed to thicken, the ship's intermittent vibrations lending a pulse to the growing dread. "We need more than cryptic threats," Voss countered, his voice steady despite the unease that clawed at his insides. "What are you planning?" The creature paused, its eerie, glowing eyes narrowing as if amused. "You humans are always so eager for answers," it rasped, its voice a harsh whisper that seemed to scrape against the nerves. "You'll see soon enough. The awakening has begun, and you cannot stop it." Rourke, gripping his weapon tighter, glanced at Voss, his expression a mix of resolve and apprehension. "Captain, we should get back to the ship. We need to prepare—" His words broke off as a deep, resonant sound filled the ship, a groan of metal that felt as though the very structure of the vessel was protesting. Voss nodded sharply. "Agreed. We need to move, now." Turning on his heel, he signaled the team to retreat. But as they turned to leave, the temperature abruptly dropped, the air growing icy, breaths visible in sharp puffs as they exhaled. The walls themselves seemed to constrict, the narrow passageways of the ship becoming even more claustrophobic. As they hurried back through the winding corridors, the lights flickered erratically, casting jumping shadows that danced across the walls, disorienting and dizzying in their unpredictable rhythms. The sensation of being watched intensified, a prickling awareness that sent shivers down their spines. "Something's not right," Derek murmured, his voice low. "The ship's reacting to our movements." "It's like it's alive," Rourke added, his tone edged with a note of fear that he couldn't quite mask. They moved quickly, but the ship seemed to be shifting around them. Hallways that had once been clear were now blocked by sliding panels or sudden, inexplicable malfunctions that forced them to find alternative routes. The sense of urgency was palpable, each detour ramping up their anxiety. Finally, they emerged into the main hangar, where the Phantom Fury was docked, only to find that the environment outside the ship had changed dramatically. The space that had once held only the void now swirled with a storm of cosmic debris, a whirling maelstrom that crackled with static energy. The debris collided against the hangar's shield with soft thuds, a reminder of the chaos outside. "We're cut off," Derek said, assessing the swirling debris with a tactical eye. "We can't launch in these conditions." Voss's jaw clenched as he surveyed the scene. "Then we stabilize the hangar and clear a path. We're not sitting ducks here." The creature's earlier words echoed in his mind, a warning, a prophecy of doom. Voss knew they were in the heart of something far beyond their understanding, a scheme that intertwined their fate with the mysterious workings of this alien ship. "Everyone, on me," Voss commanded, the authority in his voice rallying his crew despite the dire circumstances. "We hold this position and work on clearing that debris. We're not done yet." The crew set to work, the sound of their tools and the crackle of static filling the air as they fortified their position. Outside, the storm raged on, a visual symphony of chaos that threatened to engulf them, while inside, the resolve of the human spirit burned bright, a beacon in the enveloping darkness. As the crew of the Phantom Fury toiled against the relentless assault of cosmic debris, the cacophony of collisions played a relentless symphony against the hangar's shields. Each impact sent a jarring vibration through the floor, a stark reminder of the chaos just beyond their temporary sanctuary. The sharp scent of ionization filled the air, a byproduct of the energy barriers holding back the storm. Captain Voss stood firm, his gaze fixed on the viewport, watching as each piece of debris illuminated briefly against the shield before veering off into the void. His mind churned with strategies, each more desperate than the last, as he contemplated their slim chances of escape. "Status on the shield integrity?" Voss barked, his voice cutting through the noise of the ongoing turmoil. Derek, hunched over a console, monitored the fluctuating readings closely. "Holding at 70%, but it's a temporary solution. We need a way out of this mess and fast." Voss's eyes narrowed, surveying the swirling maelstrom. The debris seemed almost sentient, swirling with a purpose as if driven to keep them trapped. "There's a pattern in the storm," he murmured, more to himself than to Derek. "Watch how the debris moves. It's not random, it's systematic, like it's being controlled." Rourke, joining Voss at the viewport, followed his gaze. "You think the ship is causing this? That it's another layer of defense?" "Possibly," Voss replied, his brain ticking through possibilities. "If we can disrupt the pattern, maybe we can clear a path." The idea was a gambit, but they were out of good options. Voss turned to the crew, his command resonant, even amidst the din. "Derek, prepare to modify the shield frequency. We're going to push back." Derek nodded, his fingers flying over the controls, recalibrating the shields to emit a counter-frequency that they hoped would disrupt the storm's rhythm. The rest of the crew braced, knowing the risk of provoking whatever intelligence lay behind the storm. The hangar trembled as the shield's hum shifted pitch, a deep, resonating pulse that felt almost like a challenge to the cosmos itself. For a moment, the debris seemed to hesitate, as if caught off guard before the storm intensified, a visible surge of chaotic energy crashing against their defenses. "It's working!" Rourke shouted over the roar. "Look, there's a gap forming." Voss peered through the viewport, where a narrow corridor of clear space appeared, slicing through the maelstrom like a beacon. "All hands prepare to move. We may not get another chance." With the crew rallied at their stations, the Phantom Fury powered up, its engines igniting with a roar that drowned out the storm. Voss steered the ship towards the gap, the vessel shuddering as it skirted the edge of the debris field, metal groaning under the stress. As they shot through the corridor, the storm seemed to roar in fury, the debris crashing in waves behind them as if trying to snatch them back. But the Phantom Fury was swift, slipping through the chaos like a shadow fleeing the light. Clear of the debris, Voss allowed himself a brief moment of relief. But as they emerged into open space, the ship's sensors pinged alarmingly. The view ahead was no sanctuary but a new mystery, a vast, uncharted field of floating derelicts, ships of unknown origins, silent and ominous, adrift in the void. "We're not out of the woods yet," Voss muttered, eyeing the ghostly fleet. "What in the cosmos is this place?" The crew tensed, peering into the void. The sight of the derelict fleet was foreboding, hinting at secrets yet to be uncovered and dangers yet to face. The Ravager pierced through the maelstrom of battle, its hull resonating with the concussive blasts of nearby explosions. Each burst sent shivers through the metal underfoot, a constant reminder of the chaos unfolding outside. Captain Varn gripped the console, his knuckles white against the cold surface, as he surveyed the evolving battlefield with razor-sharp focus. "Captain, their flanks are weakening," Gorick reported, his voice crisp amid the cacophony of alerts and commands filling the bridge. The tactical display in front of them pulsed with the movements of countless ships, each represented by flickering lights that danced like fireflies against the backdrop of deep space. "Push forward! Target their command ship," Varn commanded, his words slicing through the tension like a blade. His eyes remained glued to the screen, watching as their fleet responded with a surge of coordinated aggression. The Council's ships recoiled under the onslaught, their formations beginning to fragment under the pressure. Outside, the stars were obscured by the debris of shattered vessels, the remnants drifting silently in the vacuum. The stench of burning circuits and heated metal permeated the Ravager, a tangible sign of the battle's intensity. The air tasted bitter, tinged with the metallic tang of ionized particles released by the ship's shields repelling enemy fire. In the midst of the chaos, Furon stood slightly apart, his gaze locked on the distant flashes of light that marked the Council's faltering defenses. His presence was a silent, stabilizing force amid the storm, though his usually impassive features were etched with concern. "Keep the pressure," Varn muttered, almost to himself, as he orchestrated another volley from their main cannons. The ship trembled as the weapons discharged, sending pulses of energy hurtling into the void, their paths illuminated briefly by the cold, indifferent light of distant stars. The Council's return fire was desperate, less coordinated now, their strikes hitting the Ravager's shields with thuds that resonated through the hull. Each impact was a drumbeat, a relentless reminder of the enemy's resolve. "We're breaking through, Captain! Their center is buckling!" Gorick exclaimed, a note of triumph breaking through his typically unflappable demeanor. His fingers danced across the controls, feeding more data into the offensive systems. "Prepare to send the ground teams. We'll need boots on their hull if we're going to end this," Varn decided, his decision clear and immediate. "Gorick, coordinate the deployment." "Yes, sir," Gorick responded, turning back to his console to relay orders. His voice carried over the low buzz of activity, commanding yet precise, ensuring no command was lost in the din of war. As the Ravager surged forward, leading the charge, Varn felt the weight of command heavier than ever, The stakes were monumental, not just for him or his crew, but for Earth and its future in the galaxy. The battle was theirs to lose now, and victory was within reach. But at what cost? Outside, the darkness of space was lit by the eerie glow of fires burning on disabled ships, casting ghostly shadows that flickered and danced across the debris-strewn battlefield. It was a haunting reminder of the fragility of life amidst the vastness of the universe. A ballet of destruction choreographed on the grandest of stages, with Earth writing its own defiant narrative in the annals of galactic history. The Phantom Fury held its position near the battleship as Rourke diligently worked to isolate and decode the transmission. The static-laden voice crackled through the speakers again, more coherent this time, though the language remained elusive, its cadence strange and unfamiliar. "Any luck with that signal?" Captain Voss asked, his voice carrying a mix of urgency and restraint as he watched the derelicts floating silently around them. Rourke adjusted the frequency modulator, his brow furrowed in concentration. "I've managed to clean up the audio, but the language isn't in our database. It's completely unknown," he replied, his voice tinged with frustration. The garbled words seemed to echo through the bridge, a ghostly reminder of their isolation in this graveyard of ships. Voss nodded, his gaze fixed on the damaged battleship. "Keep trying. There has to be a way to understand it," Derelict chimed in, his tone analytical. "Captain, I think the ship's origin might give us a clue. This design isn't just alien, it's ancient. We're possibly dealing with a civilization that predates known galactic records." As they pondered the implications, a soft vibration began to emanate from the hull of the battleship. It wasn't audible but palpable, felt rather than heard, a resonance that seemed to align perfectly with the pulses of light coursing along the gash in its side. Voss felt a chill as the air around them seemed to electrify, the hairs on his arms standing on end. "That energy pattern, it's almost rhythmic, like a heartbeat," he observed, his voice a whisper, almost drowned out by the pervasive silence. "Or a distress beacon," Derelict suggested, peering closely at his screens. "It could be automated, triggered by the ship's critical damage." The possibility hung in the air, heavy and significant. If true, it meant that they were not just stumbling upon a derelict ship, but potentially an active, albeit failing, lifeline to a lost civilization. Just then, Rourke's console beeped sharply, a breakthrough. "Captain, I've managed to run the transmission through a deep linguistic analysis. It's taken a few liberties based on syntax patterns, but we might have something approximating a translation." Voss stepped closer. "On speaker," the voice resumed, this time with a rough translation overlay that rendered it into choppy but understandable galactic standard. "Help us. Eternal darkness. Cannot escape. They watch us." The message repeated, looping back on itself like a call into the void. The implications were as chilling as the message itself, suggesting not just a plea for help but a warning. "They watch us," Derelict repeated quietly, a skeptical frown creasing his brow. "Who are they?" Before Voss could respond, a sudden light erupted from the battleship, illuminating the surrounding debris field and casting stark, looming shadows against the other derelicts. It flickered, unstable, pulsating with an urgent intensity. "There's your answer," Voss said grimly, his eyes narrowing at the light source. "Something or someone is still active on that ship, and it looks like we've just been invited in." Determined to uncover the mystery, Voss made his decision. "Prepare an away team. We're going aboard. Whatever secrets this ship holds, it's time we brought them into the light." As they geared up for the mission, the cold silence of the void seemed to press closer, the unknown depths of the battleship promising answers that might be as perilous as the darkness surrounding them. Prepared and wary, Captain Voss led the away team through the newly formed breach in the hull of the ancient battleship. The passage was lined with a thick layer of cosmic dust that muffled their footsteps, lending an oppressive quietude to their descent into the ship's heart. A cool draft meandered through the structure, carrying with it the faint, musty scent of decay, an olfactory echo of the ship's long dormancy. The interior was a labyrinth of shadow and intermittent light. Panels flickered sporadically, casting an eerie glow that painted their faces in ghostly hues. The walls were etched with patterns that seemed to move just at the edge of vision, creating an unsettling illusion of life in the cold metal. As they ventured deeper, the sense of something watching grew more intense. Derek, trailing a hand along the wall, paused. "These markings," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're not just decorative. They're functional, part of the ship's navigation system, but modified." Voss stopped, turning to him. "Modified how?" "Like they've been repurposed," Derek explained, his gaze tracing the cryptic symbols. "To monitor, maybe even control. It's as if the ship itself is an entity, aware of our presence." The thought hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that tightened around them like a noose. They continued onward, each turn and dip in the corridor, drawing them closer to the source of the pulsating light they had seen from outside. Suddenly the corridor opened into a vast chamber, the heart of the ship, where a massive device dominated the center. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, a complex structure of intertwining metals and pulsating energy nodes that thrummed with a vibrant, almost lifelike rhythm. The device cast a bright, unwavering light that filled the chamber, shadows dancing wildly around its edges. "This is it," Rourke said, his voice awed yet tense, "the source of the signal." As they approached, the air grew thicker, charged with an electric anticipation. Voss felt a prickling on the back of his neck, the unmistakable sensation of imminent danger. He raised his hand, signaling the team to halt. "Look," he pointed towards the base of the device, where a series of holographic images flickered to life. Scenes of chaos and destruction played out in silent accusation, a visual history of the ship's last moments. Among the images, they saw figures, beings of light and shadow, struggling against an unseen force. Then, the images shifted, coalescing into a single chilling message projected in galactic standard: "Free us." The plea was simple yet profound, resonating with a desperation that was almost palpable. Derek looked at Voss, his eyes wide with realization. "Captain, this ship, it's not just a relic. It's a prison." Voss's resolve hardened. "Then we know what we have to do." Turning back to the device, he approached cautiously, aware now of the stakes. "We're going to shut it down, free whatever's trapped here." As they set to work, the device's light pulsed faster, as if agitated by their intent. The walls vibrated softly, a low murmur of dissent that crescendoed into a dissonant chord. Yet amidst the growing chaos, Voss's voice remained steady, a beacon of resolve in the shadowy depths of the alien ship. "We end this now," he declared, his declaration echoing off the chamber walls, their mission clear, their resolve unshakable. The mystery of the derelict fleet was unraveling, thread by ominous thread, pulling them deeper into its ancient secrets. As Captain Voss and his team prepared to deactivate the mysterious device, the air around them crackled with a strange energy. The light from the device pulsed more intensely, casting stark, elongated shadows that seemed to writhe against the chamber walls. The very atmosphere was charged, as if the ship itself sensed their intentions and was rallying against them. Derek, working swiftly at a makeshift control panel they had rigged up, wiped sweat from his brow. His hands moved with precision, unhooking power nodes one by one. "Almost there," he muttered, his voice tinged with urgency. "This thing doesn't want to shut down. It's like it's fighting back." Voss stood watch, his gaze sweeping the room. The holographic images continued to flicker erratically, showing brief glimpses of the ship's past, scenes of beings like shadows slipping through walls, their features blurred and indistinct. Each image was accompanied by a low, thrumming noise that vibrated through the metal floor, a sound felt more than heard, resonating deep within their bones. Rourke, stationed at the chamber's entrance, kept a wary eye on the corridor. "We're not alone," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He pointed towards the darker recesses of the chamber where the shadows seemed denser, more substantial. "Something's moving out there just beyond the light." The air grew colder, a chill that seeped into their very marrow. Voss clenched his jaw, focusing on the task at hand. Keep your eyes peeled and cover Derek. We can't leave without shutting this down. The device suddenly emitted a high-pitched keening sound that echoed off the chamber walls, causing the team to wince. Derek gritted his teeth, pulling the last of the power nodes. That should do it. But instead of powering down, the device's light flared brilliantly, blinding them momentarily. When their vision cleared, the holograms had changed. Now, they depicted a new scene. The shadowy beings were not escaping, but being sucked into the device, their essences absorbed by its light. It's a trap, Voss realized, his voice harsh. A soul trap. It wasn't just powering the ship, it was harvesting them. Derek looked up, his face pale. And we've just set them free. No sooner had he spoken than the temperature in the room dropped sharply, a frost forming on the walls and creeping across the floor. The shadows at the edges of the room grew thicker, coalescing into forms that were almost human, their outlines flickering like candle flames in a draft. "We need to move! Now!" Voss commanded. The team rallied, moving back towards the entrance with the shadowy figures edging closer, their movements silent but deliberate. As they retreated, the ship began to shudder, a deep, groaning sound resonating through the hull. The light from the device dimmed, then extinguished completely, plunging the chamber into darkness. Only the emergency lights from their suits pierced the blackness, casting eerie beams that seemed to swallow rather than illuminate. They made their way back through the corridors, the sounds of their hurried footsteps echoing bizarrely, as if someone, or something, were following just a step behind. Derek glanced back once, catching a glimpse of something moving just at the edge of the light, then turning away, focusing on the path ahead. "Keep moving," Voss urged, pushing them forward. The mystery of the ship was deeper and darker than any of them had anticipated, and now, freed from their centuries-long imprisonment, the shadow beings were restless, their intentions as unknown as the depths of the dark space surrounding them. Barely ahead of the encroaching shadows, Captain Voss and his team burst into the Phantom Fury, the ship's doors sealing shut with a hiss that marked their narrow escape. The air inside felt stiflingly warm after the cold of the alien ship, the familiar scent of metal and electronics, a stark contrast to the musty void they had fled. "Report!" Voss barked as soon as they were inside, scanning the faces of his crew for signs of injury or undue stress. "We're all accounted for," Derek responded, his voice firm despite the fatigue shadowing his features. "But whatever we released is still out there, and the ship's sensors are picking up increased activity outside." Voss approached the main console, his eyes narrowing as he analyzed the data. The sensor readings showed a swarm of energy signatures moving erratically around their ship, like predators circling their prey. "We need a plan, and we need it now," he stated, the urgency clear in his tone. Rourke stepped forward, pointing to the sensor data. "The activity's pattern. It's not random. They seem to be reacting to our energy emissions. Maybe we can use that." Voss considered this, turning to Derek. "Suggestions?" "We could modify the external energy pulses," Derek proposed, tapping into the console to bring up the ship's energy management system. "If we emit a controlled burst of energy away from the ship, it might draw them off. Give us a chance to move." Voss nodded, his decision made. "Do it. Set up a series of pulses at increasing distances. Make them irregular, unpredictable. Keep them guessing." Derek's fingers flew over the controls, programming the pulses. Each burst of energy would need to be powerful enough to attract attention, but not so strong as to deplete their reserves. It was a delicate balance, a game of cosmic cat and mouse. As the first pulse fired, the external monitors showed the shadows shifting, their forms wavering as they turned towards the new source of energy. The Phantom Fury shuddered slightly under the strain, but held steady. "Prepare to move on my mark," Voss ordered, his gaze fixed on the screen. "Derek, keep those pulses coming. Rourke, get to navigation. I want you ready to jump us out of here the moment we have a clear path." The crew worked with a precision born of countless drills, each member attuned to the ship and each other. The Phantom Fury felt alive beneath their feet, a testament to their skill and determination. As the final pulse drew the swarm further away, Rourke's voice came through, tense but controlled. "Path is clear, Captain. Ready to initiate jump." Voss gave a curt nod. "Do it." The ship vibrated, the hum of the jump drive filling the space as reality seemed to warp around them. Then, with a sudden lurch, they were moving, the stars stretching into lines as they made their escape. When the stars finally snapped back into place, the tension broke. They were clear, the sensor reading showing no pursuit. Voss allowed himself a moment of relief before turning to his crew. "Good work, everyone, but stay alert. We don't know if they can follow, and we need to be ready." As the Phantom Fury sailed through the quiet of space, the crew was silent, each lost in thought. They had escaped, but at what cost? The mystery of what they had unleashed lingered, a dark cloud over their victory. But for now, they had survived, and in the depths of space, survival was the sweetest victory. As the Phantom Fury emerged from the jump, Captain Voss stood firm in the command center, his eyes scanning the dark expanse of space displayed on the monitors. The crew, still tensed from their narrow escape, awaited his orders, their faces reflecting the flicker of the console lights, revealing flickers of both relief and residual fear. Voss turned to Derelict. "We need to assess any damage to the ship and review our defensive systems. Whatever we encountered might still pose a threat." Derelict nodded, already pulling up the necessary diagnostics on his console. "Running checks now. The jump strained the auxiliary systems, but nothing critical seems to be offline." The ship felt eerily silent after the chaos they had fled, the absence of immediate danger almost as jarring as its presence had been. The smell of ionized air lingered, a sharp reminder of the energy discharges they had used in their escape. "Let's not assume we're out of danger yet," Voss continued, his voice carrying clearly through the bridge. "Rourke, plot a course for the nearest Alliance outpost. We need to debrief and warn them about what we've discovered." Rourke acknowledged with a quick, "On it, Captain," his fingers moving swiftly across the navigation panel. Voss's next concern was the crew's morale and stamina. "Take shifts getting some rest," he instructed, glancing around at the weary but attentive faces. "We've been through a lot, and I need everyone sharp." As the ship cruised through the void, Derelict reported back with the results of the system diagnostics. "Shields are at 85% capacity, and energy reserves are holding steady. We took some minor hits to the outer hull, but it's nothing that can't be patched up once we dock." "Good," Voss replied, his tone approving. "Keep monitoring the sensors. Whatever those beings were, they could have tracking capabilities we're not aware of." The bridge crew nodded, each returning to their tasks with renewed focus. Voss himself felt the weight of command heavier than ever. The mystery of the shadow entities and the ancient ship's AI was far from solved, and the implications of their encounter could be far-reaching. Hours passed, the ship's steady hum a constant in the background, the stars outside flowing past like distant rivers of light. Finally, Rourke broke the silence. "Captain, we're approaching the Alliance outpost. Should be within communication range soon." "Signal them," Voss commanded. "Send them our logs and warn them about the potential danger. I want them ready for us when we arrive." The communication was sent, and a tense wait followed. When the outpost finally responded, their message was a mix of concern and urgency. "Acknowledged, Phantom Fury. We're prepping for your arrival. The Council wants a full debrief immediately." As the outpost loomed into view, a massive structure floating against the backdrop of a swirling gas giant, Voss felt a momentary sense of safety. But it was fleeting. The universe had just become a more complicated place, and the Phantom Fury was at the heart of it. "Prepare for docking," Voss instructed, watching as the outpost grew larger on the screen. "And alert the crew. Once we're secure, we're going straight to the council chamber." As they maneuvered into the docking bay, the familiar sound of the airlocks engaging was a small comfort. They were home, but for how long, and at what cost? The answers to those questions lay ahead, as uncertain as the void they navigated. Docked securely at the Alliance outpost, the crew of the Phantom Fury disembarked with the weight of their recent encounters pressing heavily upon them. They moved through the metallic corridors of the outpost, the echo of their boots a stark reminder of the silence they had left behind in the ghostly fleet. Captain Voss led his weary team directly to the council chamber, where the air was thick with anticipation and the sharp scent of electrical ozone from the overworked systems. As they entered, a hush fell over the room. The council members, an assembly of varied species from across the known galaxies, awaited their report with grave expressions. Voss stood before them, his posture resolute, the gravity of his duty clear in his steady gaze. "Councilors," he began, his voice resonant, carrying the weight of his words with deliberate gravity. "We encountered something out there, an ancient ship, not just adrift, but guarding, or perhaps imprisoning something very old and very dangerous." He paused, letting the implications of his words sink in. Murmurs fluttered around the room like disturbed shadows. "We believe," Voss continued, "that we inadvertently released these entities, beings of energy and shadow, trapped for eons. This was no mere rescue mission. It was a release that we fear could have consequences we are yet unprepared to handle." A counselor, a tall, thin being with luminescent skin, rose from their seat. "What do you propose, Captain Voss?" The voice was calm, but carried an undercurrent of urgency. Voss looked back at his crew, pride and confidence in his team evident in his glance. "We propose vigilance and preparation. The Phantom Fury and her crew are ready to stand on the front lines. We've faced these shadows. We understand the threat they represent." "Are we to go to war with shadows, Captain?" another counselor asked, skepticism plain in their tone. "Not war," Voss corrected gently, "but a stand. We stand against the darkness, with light and knowledge. We don't just fight, we protect. We secure our future by facing what we've unleashed." The chamber fell silent, the counselors absorbing his declaration. It was Derek who broke the silence, stepping forward. "We've seen what these beings can do, felt their power," he said. "But we've also seen that they can be understood, perhaps even reasoned with. We need to study them, learn from them," Rourke added. "And we need to be prepared. We've been given a second chance to correct our mistake. We can be the shield that guards the realms of all species." The counselors nodded slowly, the weight of the decision before them clear. "Then let it be so," the lead counselor decreed. "Prepare your ship, Captain Voss. You and your crew will lead this task force against the shadows. Keep them from spreading further into our galaxies." As they left the council chamber, Voss felt the shift in the air, a change like the first stirring of a breeze before a storm. They had come seeking help, but instead, they were now leading a crucial mission. The story of the Phantom Fury was far from over. It was evolving into a legend, one of bravery and a stand against darkness, a testament to human courage and resolve. "Let's show them why you don't just call for help in the darkness," Voss said to his crew, a slight smile playing on his lips. "You light a fire so bright that even shadows flee."